Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to solve multiplication and division equations. And I'm going to show you all the steps. I want you to make sure you're taking notes, copy down all the examples I give you, and then I'm going to give you some to try. Make sure you bring them to class tomorrow. So the 3 steps to solving equations for multiplication and division are exactly the same as the 3 steps for solving equations for addition and subtraction. You are going to try to isolate the variable. Step 2, you're going to use inverse or opposite operations. And step 3, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you do to the other. Here we see a multiplication example. 11x, first of all, make sure you know, means 11 times x when the number is in front of the variable. We're still going to try to do the opposite. So the opposite of multiplication is division. The opposite of division is multiplication. And we're still going to do the same thing to both sides. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like. So 11 times x equals 77. The way we show our work here is we're going to try to isolate x, which means we're going to move the 11. In order to move the 11, I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. In algebra, we don't use the little division sign anymore. In algebra, we use the fraction bar to show division. So I'm going to divide by 11 and do the same thing to the other side if I divide this side by 11. Now, when I divide by 11, that actually gives me 1, not 0, like when I'm adding and subtracting. But 1x is the same as x being alone. So x is now isolated, and 77 divided by 11 is simply 7. This is a very simple example of how to show you work with multiplication one-step equation. Okay, I'd like you to try, why don't you try a couple? There's a few negatives here, so make sure you remember the rules of dividing by negative. Pause the video, unpause when you're finished, and we'll go over them. Okay, let's see how you did. And not just did you get the correct answer, but did you show your work correctly the way I asked you to. Remember, all of this is going to build up to being able to do longer, more difficult, multi-step equations, and showing your work is going to be really important, I promise. Okay, so this first one, to get rid of the 3, hopefully you divided by 3 and divided the other side by 3. Show your canceling with a slash, and x equals -6. Okay? Check your work and your answer. In this one, I'm going to divide by 2 because that's the number with the variable. That cancels. Divide the other side by 2, and x equals -3. You should always check your work as well, so we can go back and mentally ask ourselves, is 2 times -3 -6? That answer is yes. Okay, number 3, divide this side. This time, I have a negative coefficient, so I make sure I'm going to divide by -10 on both sides. That cancels. X is isolated, and x equals 180 divided by 10, which is 18, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So x equals 18. Last one, I'm going to divide by 7. Divide this side by 7, show my canceling, x is alone, and it equals -12. Okay, so hopefully you did well on those. Make sure you bring these examples to class tomorrow. Let's look at a division example. Here's a one-step equation with division. Remember, the little fraction bar means divide. We're going to, again, use the same 3 steps. We are going to try to isolate x. We are going to use the opposite operation, and whatever we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. So in this example, we're going to do the inverse of division. The opposite or inverse of division is multiplication. And we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the number with the variable. Okay, so how am I going to show my work? Let's take a look. So x divided by 4 equals 12. And again, this is a very simple one-step equation. I know you know what x equals. I know we can probably do these mentally, but again, I want you to practice showing your work. So when we get to the harder equation, you'll know exactly what to do. All right, so the opposite of division is multiplication. How do we show multiplication in algebra? You no longer use the x, that's a variable. So the way I'm going to show multiplication is with parentheses. I'm going to put a little 4 in parentheses right next to the x here on the top. If I multiply it by this whole little fraction, if you want to think of it as that, it will cancel out the 4's. It'll make 1. 4 times x over 4 will give me 4x over 4, which is, again, like 1x. So x will be isolated. Brings me to rule number 3. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. Okay, and this is going to get me my answer, my solution, x equals 48. And I'm going to circle my answer. Okay, again, the skill I'm showing you here is how to show your work, so that when we get to the more difficult equations, you'll be able to go step by step and solve them, because you know what you're doing, you know how you're solving these equations. All right, try these 4. Pause the video, unpause, and we'll see how you did. Okay, let's take a look at number 1. X divided by 3 equals 2. I'm going to show my work in a different color so you can check. This time I'm going to multiply both sides by 3, because multiplying is the opposite of dividing. Multiply this side by 3 also. That will cancel out the 3's here. X will be alone, and x equals 6. I want to point out all of our examples are also very simple because the variable is on the left. The variable can be on the right as well. We'll see more examples like that later on. All right, number 2. So x divided by 2 equals 7. Check carefully to see that you did your work like this. I'm going to multiply this side by 2. Multiply this side by 2. The 2's cancel, and x equals 14. Again, you can go back and mentally check, is 14 divided by 2 7? And when your answer is yes, then you've done your work correctly. Okay, number 3. So x divided by 7 equals 3. In this one, I'm going to multiply both sides by 7, the number with the variable, because I want to isolate the variable. I want x to be alone. X is now alone, and x equals 21. And last one, check this last one. So I won't rewrite this. I'm dividing by 4, so I'm going to use the opposite operation and multiply by 4 with the number with the variable. Do the same thing to both sides. And that'll cancel and get my x alone. And negative 8 times 4 is negative 32. Don't forget your sign. All right, so that is a very few quick, easy examples of one-step equations with multiplication and division. Bring these tomorrow and we'll move forward onto more difficult, complex, multi-step equations. See you then.